Good morning, everybody. We are live on a Tuesday. Oh, it's chilly, but what do you expect for the end of June? And with me is none other than Mash, who you met last week, who is back by popular demand. People liked hearing from you, dude. How are you?
Good morning. I'm good. I'm glad people liked hearing from me.
Yeah, you were very entertaining last week, actually.
Oh, thank you so much. I was actually nerve-wracked, so I'm glad that people actually liked me.
No, you were terrific. Listen, you came in here, you're confident. You know, we found some good people over the last couple of months, because the hardest thing to do on this show is to just get on there and be yourself and like have something to say and have something valuable to add, have a bit of a sense of humor about yourself, not take it too seriously. You've done all of that stuff. Well done. Sounding good.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we want to hear from you this morning in the comments. You can let us know what you're up to. Just drop us a YouTube comment, or if you'd like, you can also get hold of us on email, contact@cliffcentral.com, especially if you're listening. A lot of people aren't listening live, so you'll be listening at some other point through the course of the day today, and you want to give us some feedback, so we want to hear from you. Let us know what you're up to. All right, so a couple of things to get to this morning. Lebang is meant to be with us, but I'm thinking Lebang is probably going ahead with this morning. She says, I've got cramps, plus I don't want to have to push during the show, lol. So it could be happening today.
Finally.
She could be giving birth today. But the weirdest thing about this Lebang, right? She is such a nutcase that she is also moving house. She is moving on Friday. Now, this is while she's heavily pregnant. She may even give birth this week, but she's moving house. Now, I don't know if you know this, Mash, but there are a couple of things in life which are considered the most stressful things that people can do. One of them is moving house. Another one for many people is speaking in front of a crowd, although that's not a problem for all of us. Otherwise, this show wouldn't go ahead every day. Another one is divorce. And another one is obviously death, death in the family. So when someone in the family dies, it can be tremendously stressful, obviously, especially if it's someone you really loved, someone very close to you. So Lebang is dealing with birth, which I reckon would come in at number 5 if it went that far. If the list went beyond 4, birth would be number 5, because it is stressful. And there's a whole new person who comes into the world. But she's also chosen to do the other one, which is moving house, in the same week. Which is crazy. I mean, talk about loading yourself up with a whole lot of stress.
Moving house is so hectic. I just did it recently, so I know the stress of it all. And to a certain extent, I do understand where Lebang is coming from, because you do want to move before the baby arrives. Because once the baby's here, you can't be lifting boxes and breastfeeding at the same time.
No, definitely. It's but you shouldn't be lifting boxes at all at this point. I mean, it's just unbelievable,
Absolutely.
It's asking for like a lot of stress. We want to hear from you this morning. So a couple of comments coming through. A lot of people just being rude to each other here. There's, the comments section is just full of people who go at each other the whole time.
They just attack each other the whole time. That's all I ever see.
I mean, look here, for example. Tabo says, which people? I know enough people from Tahleho, sorry. And then Tahleho replies and says, Tabo Pali, I wish your parents never made you, idiot. This is a kind of warm welcome that you get early in the morning.
Wow.
On the show.
Wow.
So Tabo does say he just bought a house and I have to move soon. It's giving me so much anxiety because everything is moving so slowly with the municipality and lawyers. Well, I did a couple of things yesterday. I had a very productive day, which I'm pleased about because I've been feeling like I haven't been doing enough at the moment. And I had quite a lot of work, so I finished most of that in the morning. I got it done by like 11:30, 12-ish. And then I decided, screw this, I'm going to sort out the house, and I'm going to sort out the kitchen, and I'm going to sort out the pantry, and I'm going to sort out my bathroom and all of that stuff. So I got it super organized. I bought like these containers, and everything is, it's perfectly. It's just everything is sorted into exactly the places it's meant to be. So now I can go in there, and there's no mess. There's no like open packets of pasta with some of the pasta falling out kind of shit. There's no empty boxes or expired stuff or any of that stuff. I did it all in terms of tidying out the pantry, the kitchen, the fridge, all the different cupboards. I've also cleared out a whole bunch of stuff I don't need anymore. So now it is a well-run operation. Everything that I need is there. Nothing that I don't need. I love being organized. It's my favorite thing.
Wow, Gareth, you're the only person I know who actually reorders their pantry because, first of all, I didn't know spices expire. Number one, I didn't know
Oh
that
yeah,
spices
yeah, yeah. I
expire.
didn't know that either. Yeah.
So we've had spices that expired in like 2012 and we're still using those same spices because some spices are just so, I wouldn't say rare, but they're the kind of spices you don't use every day. Like your thyme, you don't use thyme every day. Basil. I don't use basil every day. I'm sure people out there do, but I don't. So I still
Oregano.
have some of the same basil from like 12 years ago.
I didn't realize that they expired either, but you'll find out very quickly when you use it, and it doesn't even taste of anything. It's like it's just gone. It's tasteless. It just becomes, because they dry them
Yes.
out, right?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
just soil.
So Congo Chris says, I bet Gareth has a small Tupperware for his open tube of toothpaste. You know, I met someone the other day who he doesn't like a wet toothbrush. Now this is so bizarre because obviously when you put it in your mouth, it's going to get wet anyway, right?
Yeah.
He has 8 different toothbrushes which he uses on like a
Rotation.
a circuit, I suppose. Yeah, rotation. And he will use the driest one every time, and then he'll let them dry out over the period of like the next 8 or 9 days, however many toothbrushes he has. People are weird. They have their things. So if you think, I don't put my open toothpaste in a small Tupperware, but if I did, it wouldn't be the weirdest thing I've heard this week.
Wait, so his toothbrushes take 8 days to dry. 7-8 days.
Well, I suppose
that is so odd.
He doesn't want to take a chance, but that's his thing. He doesn't like putting a wet toothbrush. He says it's disgusting. I don't know why.
I thought you just shake it and it's dry.
Well, I don't let mine dry. Don't look at me like I'm the freak or the crackpot. I don't have this rule. I have one toothbrush, and only when it's really looking terrible do I throw it out and get a new one, because they're also expensive. So you get those electric toothbrushes with the different heads, right? Those are the ones we're supposed to use. But I just use a handheld one, and it's just the normal manual toothbrush. But apparently, once the color starts to fade on the bristles, you've got to throw it out and get a new one.
Yeah.
I usually go a little bit longer than that, which I know dentists say it's a terrible idea and you shouldn't do that.
It's a terrible idea,
But
yeah.
this guy eight, maybe 9 toothbrushes. I think that's what he said. And he doesn't like it when they're wet. So I don't know how that works. I do this one thing, which every probably 2 weeks, I take the toothbrush and I do put it in a little bit of hydrogen peroxide, just to make sure that it's nice and clean. Because you think about it, it's pretty gross. You put it in your mouth when you wake up in the morning, when your mouth is like not the greatest. And then, you brush your teeth again late at night, and then the thing lies there in the air. It's like in the bathroom air, which is even worse. So every 2 weeks, I'll just take a little bit of hydrogen peroxide, and you just let it burn off any of that gross shit that might have gathered on it. And then it feels like a brand new toothbrush. So there we go. There's something you didn't think you'd find out this morning.
Yeah, I learn something new every day. Now I need to learn where to find hydrogen peroxide.
You get it at the chemist. They all have
you can get it at the chemist.
Oh, yeah. Just be careful. Don't get it on your fingers, because it will turn them white, like ghostly paper white.
Whoa. Yeah. Okay, I'm not going to get it there.
Especially if it's very strong. But it's a very useful disinfectant, hydrogen peroxide. And it breaks down into water and oxygen.
Yeah. And I see here that Nico here says that you're supposed to replace your toothbrush every 3 months.
Yeah, I believe so. That's what they say, right? Somewhere around there. But I mean, some people brush very, very hard. Some people, I mean, I don't know what this is. We need a dentist to help us figure this out,
Mm,
right?
yes, because I
Bernice
remember
has Bernice has
Haibo, two
two toothbrushes.
toothbrushes.
One for the morning, one for the evenings. How do you like that?
Okay, that's really cool. But then also it gives you double the work when it comes to replacing them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, mm-mm,
Right,
mm-mm.
exactly. And then you can replace two. But maybe they last longer because you only use them once a day as opposed to twice.
Yeah,
Like
that makes
it's
sense.
maybe the 3 months. So in other words, she can have two toothbrushes over 6 months, which is the same as one every 3 months, I
That
suppose.
sounds good. Yeah.
Um,
How frequently do you replace your toothbrushes, Gareth?
uh, Probably around 3 months. It's probably around there as well.
Mm,
But they
yeah.
start looking like they need replacing after about 2.5. So, but I usually wait until 3. I'm not like such a pain in the backside about that.
Mm,
Um, I have two, says Boiled Prawn Shack, one for travel and one for home.
mm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Keenan
I
also says I'm a hard brusher. I change every 3 months. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So
You?
I replace my toothbrushes about once a year, but I can explain why. Main reason being I have multiple toothbrushes. I actually have like a bowl with toothbrushes in my bathroom. So I just close my eyes and just pick one every day. So I
Why
never
do you
know
have?
which one
Why
is
do you
the.
have?
It's because mostly because my mom, whenever I go home, every time I'm about to leave, she's like, yeah, yeah, touchy toothbrush, mtanam, touchy toothbrush, every single time I go home. So if I go home this month and next month, I'm gonna get some more toothbrushes. So I just open them, throw
Oh,
them in
okay.
the bowl, and I just close my eyes and pick one every single day.
Well, that's good. Then she's paying for your toothbrushes. That's a win. I don't see a problem
Yeah,
with that.
yeah. Sponsored
Mm,
toothbrushes. So
nice
that's
one.
very convenient. But now I don't know how old each one is. So depending on the color fading of the blue, that's how I
Hmm.
will determine.
Hmm.
But yeah, I've had that bowl for like a year now.
Well, let us talk about something that everybody's going to be dealing with. I mean, I don't know if you've filled up your car lately. I don't know if you know how horrible it is to see the price when you go and you fill up. And even if you don't fill up, you just say, oh, just give me, like 400 Rand or whatever. And 400 Rand used to be quite a lot. You used to get at least half a tank out of 400 Rand. Not
That's
anymore. It's uh,
mm,
it's hugely expensive now. Analysts have said, and they were saying this yesterday in a TV news thing that I saw. I think you saw it as well. That petrol could reach 40 Rand a liter at current rates. Keep
ah ah
going up
ah
and up and
ah.
up. No, I'm sorry. We're at what, 20? How much? 25? How
We're
much are we at,
approaching
at, a
30
liter at the
Rand.
moment?
Yes, just over 25 Rand.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So I don't know what we're going to do. We need some alternatives here as to what we can do once petrol reaches those prices. Let's hope it doesn't, but the analysts, these experts say so. We should have a plan B. What do we do
We should.
besides walk?
Well, first of all, not everybody wants to use public transport. So let's eliminate that for
Mm,
starters, because also public transport is also affected by the price of petrol. And
of
mostly because,
course,
I mean, if price goes up of petrol, taxis go up by a 5 Rand, by a 2 Rand. So you're still paying
right?
for petrol, technically. So I think
Yeah,
alternatives would be to actually completely remove petrol from your life. So any devices that use petrol, gone. So first thing we could possibly do, I think, is walking. Could
yeah,
walk everywhere or run everywhere.
yeah.
Um,
Okay. Going to
great
be a
for
little bit
fitness.
difficult for some people who are like a long way from work.
Yeah, and then I'm thinking the second thing we could possibly do is okay, maybe stay at home. Stay at home a bit more. Try not to go out as much, but also you still need a mode of
Absolutely,
transport. So I
sure.
think horse and buggy, number one. Horse and buggy is something that we
Oh
should
wow, we
actually
can
bring
go back
back.
to horses.
Yes, the Amish
Uh,
have been doing it.
didn't
Let's
we
let's
do?
all just go Amish.
Yeah, I think we talked about this just the other day on the show. Is like a horse is going to cost you a whole lot less than a car, and
Mm-hmm.
you just have to have a place to stable it, and then then you need all the food for the horse. It's not going to
Yeah,
be cheap, but it'll be probably a bit more, price reasonable. I don't. Are you allowed to ride a horse on the roads in South Africa?
I am not too sure about that. I don't think so, actually. Because I've never
I'm
seen
not
a
sure.
horse on K53s and stuff like that.
No, I haven't
Don't
either,
think you
and
can.
I'm fairly sure that if a horse went past you on the highway, first of all, the horse would be freaked out by all the traffic. Second of all, I
Mhm.
think all the people in the cars would be freaked out by the horse. So I don't know that that's a
Absolutely.
good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Bronwyn
Another
says, "How about
alternative,
electric bicycles?" She
bicycle.
says, "Yeah,
Yes, yes, that was actually up next, yeah, that I was actually thinking of. So electric bicycles are a good alternative. First reason being not too much electricity usage, and you can on most electric bicycles also pedal. So you can actually pedal, and if the battery runs out, of course. So you do have the alternative of
yeah,
actually using your manual power or electricity, and charging it is not crazy like an electric car. But we can also try out electric scooters too. That's also a good alternative. And I think in terms of electric cars, most of them are really expensive. So they're not quite justifiable in this country, especially with load shedding. So there's actually
hmm,
one electric car that I found on the internet, which I think could actually be our savior in this country. It's
yeah,
called the Alexa City Bug. You should see this thing, Gareth. It is so tiny. It is so cute. It's the cutest little car I've ever seen. It's a small little four-seater, and it has two
yeah."
doors. It's adorable. It is so cute. It is so small. I know some people are gonna laugh at it, but it is a very cute car. It weighs less than a
ELE.
ton.
I'm just gonna
ELE
look this up.
KSA.
ELEKSA. All right, let me just find a picture of this for everybody. Hey, listen, at this point, I don't even care what it looks like. As long as it gets you from where you want to go to where you want to go without having to pay for petrol, that is that's a big win. I mentioned that
Absolutely.
yesterday I was going to have someone come around so that they could look at solar here, just so that I could have lights, when the lights go out, because God knows, aren't we sick of that shit?
Oh,
And and the guy was like, "Well, you know what? If you're not running your geysers and you're not running, um, during load shedding, now I'm talking about, because it's not like I'm going to be putting electricity back into the grid, but during load shedding, you can probably do this stuff, and it's sustainable. It's like you can, while the power's out, you can do all of this. It's not going to bankrupt you. You can keep the lights on, and then you'll be able to have electricity while everybody else is sitting in the dark. And that's the worst part, especially winter. I don't know if you agree with me, but like in winter, you do not want to be, lying there in the freezing cold, which is bad enough, even if you've got a blanket on you, and it's also pitch dark, and you like
Mm.
stumbling around and bumping into things. It's not a good idea. Here's the
It's not.
Alexa, by the way.
It
That's
is
the Alexa
adorable.
City Bug. You say it's a four-seater. It looks to me like it can barely take two people. Is that really a four-seater?
Yes, two adults and two newborn babies at the back.
Yeah, there's the terms. Newborn babies is the terms and conditions. Hey,
Yeah.
listen, that thing looks like it could be quite sensible. I mean, once petrol goes up to above 30 rand a liter, which we really hope it doesn't, but it could, then you don't
Yeah.
have an option. You to drive whatever you can afford, and this thing looks like it might be a better option. Doesn't look like it uses a lot of power. You could probably charge it overnight. Can go
Yeah.
easily, like 40, 60, 80, maybe 100 kilometers before you need to recharge it again. Then when you get to
Yeah.
wherever you're going, you charge it on that side and go home.
Yeah, its top speed is 55 kilometers an hour. So not too sensible for
Right.
the highway, but its range is up to 100 kilometers. So just perfect for a little running around in the city.
See, it's like a golf cart. And I don't mind if I look stupid in a car like that. I've driven a lot of bizarre cars in my life, and if it's fuel efficient, I'm all for it. There used to be a time where I gave a shit and I would like be, oh no, I want to drive something that looks cool. I mean, I had sports cars when I was younger and all of that shit. No more of that. No more of that wasted time and money.
None of
Sorry,
it. Mm,
going straight for these things. So there it is,
absolutely.
the city bug, the Alexa city bug. Listen, this is especially a good option if you are in town and you live in town,
Mhm.
and you don't have far to go. I mean, if you just go to the shops and things like that, like I did yesterday, then it's totally doable, right?
It's totally doable. It makes life so much more
Yeah.
convenient, so easy, and it's lightweight. It's so small. I see somebody here commented, who's this? Congo Chris said you can park it in your pocket.
Sven says the electric car is good for you, GC. With your solar panels, you can charge your electric car. Yeah, well, I'll let you know. I'll keep you informed how that whole process goes. Tatlejo says, I ran around Kailami horse stable on the weekend. Listen, I love those tall-legged animals, but apparently it's expensive to keep and maintain. And also drivers around here are so friendly. Well, someone pointed out the other problem with a horse is that there's going to be horse shit all over our roads again for the first time since like the turn of the century, the 1900s. And you can't drink and horse, according to Sebastian. That's a good point. Apparently, e-bikes are very cool, but also not very cheap. And Rebellious Ruth is backing the taxis. She says they will be our savior. Hope the taxis cause havoc as they rule the country anyway. No. And Luzanne says, I'm getting a Vespa, I swear. Well, what's fuel consumption on those like? Because maybe that's also a good option. You know, you get these bikes that are, they're not super bikes. They're not the really fast ones. They're not the ones that can race. They're just these low-level ones, these low-grade ones. I'm sure you can get one of those cheap too. And then you just have to be very careful with choosing the right route. Look, a lot of people are saying stop complaining. Like, for example, Carl says, just shut up, pay for fuel. There's fuck all you can do. Stop dreaming. All right, well, you've given up before you even started.
Absolutely. I mean, the world is all about alternatives. There is something we can do. We just have to find it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I would get an iX if I had the money, says K-Star M. Oh, yeah, listen. That is a hell of a nice car. I mean, if you haven't listened to our podcast series that we did with BMW, you can find it on cliffcentral.com. And we actually did a whole review of the iX, which is really, really good. You can go and listen to the guys reviewing it. Yeah, it's a superb, but that is expensive. However, once you've got it, I suppose what you lose on the swings, you gain on the roundabouts. So you can probably justify it to the tax man. You can justify it to yourself. You can justify it to your partner. If you have the cash, then maybe it's not a bad idea to go fully electric. Electric cars are silent death for playing children. Ooh, that's a scary thought. Yeah, but playing children shouldn't be in the street.
That's true.
And it's the driver who has to look after that. Right. Derek is being very practical. Derek says the solution is to not let the government determine the price of petrol. A large percentage of our price includes bullshit taxes, e.g. the bankrupt and poorly managed road accident fund, which is true. And Keenan says, it looks like we are on our way back into the Voortrekker days. Yeah, I'm afraid so, history repeating itself.
You just have to accept it.
I wanted to talk about this quickly. You went on 2 dates with somebody, and then after just 2 dates, they asked you to move in with them. Holy shit. You must be the most charming date in the world. 2 dates, and they're like, come, move in with me.
I like to think I am. Well, so this person I met this person 2 weeks ago. Started talking 2 weeks ago, and just 2 dates in. So first of all, first date was at this person's house, which already freaked me out because who just lets a stranger come to their house? I'm still a stranger at that point. You haven't met me.
Well,
so first date was
maybe you don't seem like a serial killer. Maybe you're a trustworthy seeming person and they're willing to take a chance. Give yourself some credit.
It's very concerning. So now, after just 2 dates, this person's like, yo, come move in, come live with me, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hey, I'm not too sure. I am considering it though. I know it sounds crazy. I am actually considering it because I think life is all about taking a risk. Life is all about taking that leap.
I'm going to guess then that you're as crazy as they are because you're actually thinking about it. No, look, I mean, I'm all for taking a chance and all the rest, but just like you say, oh, well, what kind of person invites someone to their house the first date? But you're actually considering it?
I am, because I just think that, sometimes, who can I use as an example? I've seen couples who actually dated for like 2 months, 4 months, and they've been married for 25 years. I've heard stories like that.
Is this stuff you've seen on TV? Because I don't believe
Yeah.
that happens very often. Usually, I mean, listen to all these people. They're like, oh my God, Snae says, don't do it, all in caps. Congo Chris says, it's a trap mash, run.
Hey, Bo.
This conversation reminds me of CS, somebody. Beware of the bunny boiler, says Seamus. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Carl says, it sounds like a crazy person. There's not one person is saying this is a good idea. Not one.
But I am heavily considering it still. Because I went to this person's space, I did see how they live. They're very clean, like incredible, like clinically clean, actually, clinically clean. And I was very impressed by that. For me, honestly, my bar is very low. You know, living with someone who can't cook and all that, my bar is very low. So, I mean, just be able to cook and just be clean, and I'm already jumping in with you.
Well, I mean, also, what if it goes wrong? You've only been on 2 dates, so by maybe the 4th date, it's not working out so well. Then you're suddenly homeless.
Ish. So what I'm thinking of rather doing is maybe spending maybe a weekend. Start small, baby steps.
Yeah. That's a good start.
Yeah.
I mean,
A weekend,
again,
yeah.
people are saying Amber Alert, says K-Star. People are you're being swindled. Don't do it, says Tatlejo. This is amazing. Someone says here, don't do it. You'll end up like a leather lampshade. And Dogozo wants to know, are they rich?
They are. Hence, I'm considering it. So it's a very big deciding factor. Okay. I'll be down by the horse stables. Yeah, okay. Hence, I was considering horses this morning as a mode of transport.
Okay, I see what's going on here. You found someone with lots of money. Aneska says, just try a weekend first and see how it goes. Ooh, okay.
Yeah, baby steps. Listen. I'll just give it baby steps. And if it works out, then I guess I'll be a lampshade. And if it doesn't, then I'll go back home.
Goldashik says American Psycho also had a clean home. Bernice says maybe just a night. Have you spent a night there yet?
I haven't even spent a night yet.
Ooh, to baby steps, please. Return to the Wild, the only one who's prepared to go with this, says, do it, Mash. I want to hear the follow-up story at some stage.
Yeah, I will. I'm sure the story is going to be pretty good, pretty positive. It could even be marriage. You never know. Well, I'm very optimistic about this.
You're jumping into this. Tabo says, it was nice knowing you. We will miss you. We'll leave it at that. Oh, my God. All right, so here are a couple of headlines for you this morning. There are a few stories in the news that you need to know about. First of all, Kendrick Lamar closed up at Glastonbury Festival with a powerful plea for women's rights. He said, while he had blood pouring down his face from a crown of thorns, I mean, this is the kind of drama that you have to do now in order to get noticed. He said, Godspeed for women's rights. They judge you, they judge Christ. He repeated the phrase over and over with increasing intensity, eventually breaking off mid-sentence and throwing his microphone to the ground before walking off stage. So a big theatrical, forceful performance. During the show, Lamar, who won a Pulitzer Prize for his 2017 album, Damn, addressed the themes of guilt, greed, loyalty, power, ambition, and prejudice, shouldering the audience's problems by examining his own. Wah. I like Kendrick Lamar, but as far as I'm concerned, this sounds like a real attention-seeking, hopping on the bandwagon. I suppose you have to do this if you're in music now, because these days, everyone's looking to be the most relevant. So whatever's going on in the news, you need to be allied. You have to have some part of the show that's allied to it. You need to have some part of the show that you could say, well, I am on top of these issues. I'm the guy who's really got my finger on the pulse. So that's what he's doing here. And I suppose good for him.
Mm-hmm. And let's be honest, nowadays, nobody's really dropping any well, I wouldn't say nobody's dropping any classic songs, but it's hard to be relevant. It's hard to be remembered. I mean, we live in such a fast-paced world. You're trending this week, next week, nobody knows who you are. It's hard to remain relevant. So you have to actually push it. I mean, he was wearing a crown with like about, is it 300 diamonds on it?
Okay, so yeah, but it looked like thorns, and the diamonds, obviously. Yeah. So he's showing off at the same time as he's trying to be Jesus Christ. I don't know. If it works for you, it works for you. I like Kendrick Lamar's music. I couldn't care less about his politics. That's how I feel. Mm-hmm. But I know these days everybody's hopping on every political bandwagon they can. I mean, Congo Chris mentions here, it started with Billy Joe from Green Day announcing his U.S. citizenship. He was renouncing, rather, his U.S. citizenship on the stage at Glastonbury, all because of the Roe versus Wade being overturned. So I don't know. Listen, I don't really need artists to be getting political on everything. We spoke about this just yesterday. Must everything be political? And I hope the
Yes.
answer is no.
I always say
Sometimes you
this,
just
just
want
sing.
entertainment.
Yeah. Just sing and keep it moving. Just rap or keep it moving. Just act and keep it moving. They don't need to shove their
Right.
politics down our throats all the time.
Exactly. We're not really into you guys. So, we don't care whether you believe in this or that. I think that it would be nice if some of these musicians just gave us great music, and not everything has to have this huge political message. Anyway, so that's what's going on at Glastonbury Festival. The health department. This is really disturbing. There was that Enyobeni Tavern tragedy, right? 21 children mysteriously died. Some are being treated in hospital for backache, tight chest, vomiting, headaches. Eastern Cape Health Department has completed the post-mortems on those who died. Now, the worst part of this, and I do not understand how this happens, we've got problems in this country, but the health department in the Eastern Cape has called on the families of 5 of the kids who died because they cannot even identify them, which means those parents and those families are not even missing those children. They don't even know they're dead. They haven't even pitched up in order to try and find
Sure.
them, to identify them, to see them. They are lying in the mortuary, those 5 kids, and nobody has claimed them.
I saw on
If
Twitter that
yeah,
one of the families actually
yeah,
basically stepped forward on I saw this on social media, and they were
mhm.
like they got worried on Sunday morning when their 14-year-old daughter didn't arrive home as she usually did on Sunday mornings after going out the whole weekend. That alone worried me. That really concerned
14-year-old.
me.
I mean,
Because I was just like, how is it normal for your 14-year-old daughter to be out the whole weekend? How are you not worried? How is that just the normal weekend routine?
yeah, we've got to stop pretending that we're all the same in South Africa, and that everybody cares
Mm,
about their kids and they want to raise them properly, and they want to do the right thing, and they give a shit about like protecting children from terrible things. And clearly there's some parents who do not care at all. And maybe
mm,
maybe a lot of these parents just aren't in their children's lives. Maybe they are estranged from their kids. Maybe they have died. Maybe they are, maybe these kids have had to raise themselves. Either way, this is a major problem. Major,
mm,
major problem. 5 of these children have not even been claimed by the families. So let's just stop pretending that we live in a country where everybody has the same amount of compassion, where everybody has the same sense of duty and responsibility. Clearly, they do not. There are a lot of
mm,
parents who could give a damn about their kids. They still don't know they're missing 2 days, 3 days after this tragedy in Buffalo City in East London. I mean, it's outrageous. You can't call yourself civilized. You can't claim human rights if you don't even know 3-4 days later whether your child is alive or dead, and you haven't even
mm.
bothered to go and claim the body from the local mortuary. I mean, that is just unbelievable. Can you imagine, like after day 1, most parents would be like, "Oh my God, where are my kids?" Like you were saying, that family who realized their 14-year-old daughter was missing on the Sunday morning after this whole thing had happened on the Saturday. Then you look at the family who by the Sunday night are still not interested. They're still not worried. By the Monday
They just
morning,
want,
they're still not
yeah,
worried.
sure.
Today
I
is
wonder what's going
Tuesday.
through their minds. Yeah, today's
Well,
Tuesday. I wonder what's going through. Mhm.
if anything, what if they just don't give a shit? I mean, what if they
Could be
don't
the
give a
case.
shit? In which case, do we really have to pretend that all people in this country are equally like caring for their own kids? No, clearly not. A lot of
Mm,
parents could give a shit about their own
mm,
children. And that should make all of us very, very nervous. I mean, I remember when we were kids, we would go and play all day. As long as we were home by nighttime, everything was fine. But we didn't go out into the town. I mean, I grew up on a farm, so we would go and play on the farm, and we wouldn't go so far that we would lose ourselves, or you know, or not be able to find our way home or any of that stuff. But even if you grow up in the city, there's bound to be someone who sees you, maybe someone who knows your mom or your dad or your aunt or your uncle or your granny or someone, and goes, "Hey, shouldn't you be going home?" 14-year-olds drinking at a tavern. There were some 13-year-olds drinking there too. This is not the way that people who are conscientious about their lives behave. Now, I know we've got problems with unemployment, and there are lots of people who are desperately, desperately poor. But my God, if you have money for drinks at the tavern,
at
I have to ask
13,
the question of, how seriously are you going to take your life? What kind of a problem is that child going to be when they get to 18 or when they get to 25? I mean, Tabo says these kids these days grow up in a different and complex world. I never thought I would be raising a daughter who knows what Wi-Fi is, let alone streaming. It's tough raising kids in these times. It is. It is. But really,
Hey,
this
I think
is another point. Takleko says, guys, apparently the youngest was 13. How? I first tasted alcohol after writing my last matric paper at the Braai, which my dad picked me up from at 7 p.m. Well,
yes, I first tasted alcohol grade 11, and it was literally just that, a taste.
Well, good for you. Then you and Takleho and Tabo obviously had good parents. That's what we're saying here. Sharon says kids aren't honest with their parents. They could have arranged sleepovers at a friend and got up to mischief. Yeah, and you'll get away with that once or twice. If your parents are really not paying attention, you'll get away with it over and over again.
Not every weekend.
Yeah. But Ibn says you assume that all of these kids have parents who are alive and who worry about them. Well, Ibn, if you've made a child, if you brought a kid into the world and you don't, that is just such a damning thing. I will not have any respect for someone who brings a child into the world and then just stops looking after them around the age of what in this case could have been 5, 10, who knows? But 13-year-olds drinking at the tavern, do me a favor. These parents should not be allowed to sue when the vampire lawyer appears out of the mist and says they can make money out of this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. There's no money there, so the lawyer's not going to come out of the mist. My kids were 18 years old and had to be home at 12, not a minute later. Yes. And we are still asking this question that Carl wants to know. How did they die? The media is making it seem like they died because they were underage. That's not how it works. What the hell happened? Yeah, it seems like it was poison or something like that, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of speculation on Twitter, which I'm not going to get into, but nobody knows at the moment. We're still trying to figure out.
Right. Well, I don't know what to make of this, but that's one of the headlines. We've got to move on to some other ones, even though it's a very disturbing story. We talk about it all morning. There's an online grocery store that is using tuk-tuks, those little things with the 3 wheels?
Yes.
To do grocery deliveries in KwaZulu-Natal, because it's cheaper, obviously, with the petrol price coming all the way up. So
can I get that for myself?
Yeah, I suppose you can. You want to see what they look like?
Yes, please.
You want to see what this is? Okay, let me show you. Me show you a picture of one of these. They're those little things. They're horrible looking things, but I mean, who cares? Like we were saying for the electric car earlier, right? Who cares what it looks like if it gets you what you need? That's what
gets you
want.
From point A to point B. That's all that matters at this point.
Right. So the other thing about this car is that this delivery system is that it works in rural areas, which is really good news.
Wow. So it's basically like what service actually? Oh, so they just deliver groceries. What else do they deliver?
Yeah. Okay, so let me tell you, they've got e-retail. So basically, grocery store, delivery service. They've navigated degraded roads and rough terrain to complete more than 25,000 orders already in KwaZulu-Natal. Online shopping and food delivery is part of the package there. Those have boomed in the last 2 years, obviously buoyed by the pandemic. South Africa's brick and mortar retailers like ShopRite and Pick n Pay have grown their delivery home services. Fast food delivery giants Uber Eats and Mr. Delivery are expanding to other areas as the demand grows. And Takealot, the country's biggest e-retailer, recently reported increased sales, with overseas competitor Amazon now eyeing the South African market. Now, the townships have irregularly been overlooked by these e-commerce giants, but rural parts of the country, home to roughly a third of all South Africans, are mostly ignored. Now, this system is going to be kicking into high gear. Kulula, but it's spelled Kuloola, and they're going to be delivering all over South Africa, including to rural areas, which is very, very clever. So,
Wow.
we talk to people who are very, very smart, and we talk to people who've come up with great ideas. And this is a great idea. I love this. This is really, really clever. I hope that this is a huge success for the person who started it.
I
Very
mean, it's
clever
starting
move.
off in it also starting off in rural areas is very good, especially in KZN, because they were affected by
Yeah,
those floods. And I mean, there's still
correct.
actually damage. There's still people actually affected by that, and even now.
No, that is correct. Absolutely.
Wow.
All right. I got to play you an interview. This is, we've had a bit of a theme over the last couple of weeks. We're going to talk to Dr. Brianna Fox, who's written a book called The Descent of a Serial Killer. And it's also a show which you can watch on True Crime. It's a new true crime series, which we'll tell you about in just a second. But I'm going to play this for you so you can get an idea of this amazing show in which Dr. Brianna Fox is the expert. Can you identify a serial killer? I interviewed her a short while ago, and I want you to see this, and then we'll come back with a whole lot more. All of that just after 7 o'clock. But take a listen and take a look at this. If you are watching us live on YouTube, you will see what Dr. Brianna Fox looks like, at least at the beginning of the interview. And if you're listening on podcast or anywhere else, you can also listen a bit later. But take a listen to this. This is pretty cool. Criminologist. She was awarded her doctorate at Cambridge University. She's also a former FBI special agent and is now a professor of criminology in the US at the University of South Tampa in Florida. Dr. Fox uses her specialization in evidence-based profiling to work alongside many police departments, advising them how to identify offenders and prevent crime in their communities. Dr. Fox, it's a great pleasure to have you on the show this morning. Thank you so much for being available to talk to us.
Absolutely. And sorry, I'm outside. I was meant to be at Trinity College. I was looking so forward to it, but yeah, I apologize, but it's great to be here. I cannot wait to talk to you.
Not at all. I'm thrilled to talk to you. I'll tell you what, we can probably turn off the video just so that we don't have any interruptions. There's so much I want to ask you. I'd like to begin because obviously for many of us, our first interaction with you will be CBS Justice, which is on DSTV here in South Africa, channel 170. And there's a channel premiere of the true crime original, which is called Descent of a Serial Killer, season 1. Now, we're all looking forward to this. I think you feature very prominently in this show, and you are the one who takes a look at the serial killer and their path from childhood or early teens. Now, I've heard a lot about what makes people into serial killers, but perhaps with all your experience, you've been able to distill that into a certain number of red flags and components that make someone so crazy that they could do some of the things that we even read about in the news just the other day at the school shooting in Uvalde in Texas. I mean, I'm always concerned, I think all of us are, that there may be a serial killer living next door. How rare is this, and what should we look out for?
Yes. Well, the good news is that it is exceedingly rare. This is not something that we need to be kept up at night about, especially since the advent of DNA technology. The ability to even get away with murder so often that you have a serial killer on the loose is extremely rare. That being said, I literally had a serial killer in my neighborhood. So it is something that still
Wow.
happens today. And, even when it happened in my neighborhood, it was somebody that surprised me. So there's not one type. And unfortunately, they even can be our neighbors, and they're very difficult to spot.
So how do you spot them? I mean, this is your whole life's work, and it's an incredible amount of work, and it's obviously a discipline which very few people in the world have been exposed to at the levels that you have. Is there a short circuit way to figure out whether someone's a serial killer or not, or does it require enormous amounts of evidence and effort and work and profiling and sometimes even observation?
Right. Well, the answer is unfortunately not. There's so many different pathways, trajectories into serial offending. And while we think, oh, they should be so easy to spot these, horrible people that are hiding in the bushes and jump out at us, the reality and my interviews and research show that's not the case. A lot of them are so successful at, being evil because they blend into society so well.
Wow, it's terrifying. Now, I know in South Africa, as in the world, I mean, people just love these true crime shows. You went into it as a career and have become a specialist at it. What do you think it is that draws people to this stuff?
Well, at least for me, part of what drew me into it was understanding almost the most unthinkable and outrageous and extreme versions of human behavior. There's one thing trying to understand why somebody would, you know, act a certain way, pick a certain lifestyle, but imagine opting to murder multiple people. It is the most extreme version of human behavior and psychology. And so for me, trying to understand that was the draw. And as I'm sure it is for many people.
Oh yeah. Look, it's terrifying, but at the same time, it's fascinating. And I think many of us think that maybe if we'd been in the position that you're in so many of these cases where you're close to the evidence, you're able to watch the thing. I suppose we all would feel, that we might have been able to do something sooner. Do you often get that feeling after you've done an important case, and when you've investigated some of these cases that you have throughout your career? Do you sometimes get the feeling that if you had been on the scene, you might have been able to do more? Even before that, you might have been able to spot the telltale signs, and you could have stopped some of these killings.
I'd love to think that, but at the same time, it's almost like knowing the way that the puzzle pieces fit together once the puzzle is complete. It's a lot
Mm.
harder. And what we're trying to do in the show is show all the puzzle pieces and trying to put together these patterns. But I don't want to undermine how incredibly difficult it is to put these pieces together before you know that someone's going to be a serial killer.
So, Dr. Fox, I've heard stories about how if someone is mean to animals when they're little, or if they have a nasty streak with their siblings or any of that stuff, that's usually a sign that there could be the potential for them to develop into some kind of antisocial, maybe not a killer, but certainly someone who's slightly psychopathic or sociopathic. Do you give any credence to that stuff, or do you think that that's just an urban legend, old wives' tale, short circuit by people who are trying to figure things out that are beyond them?
It's a little bit of both. The research shows that the McDonald triad, as it's called, doesn't really play out. There are plenty of people that show a lot of those same symptoms, and they'll never go on to become serial killers. But are they potentially, facing some difficulties in their early childhood that maybe are
Mm.
worth intervention? Maybe they will never become a serial killer, but maybe they'll struggle in life or have mental health issues or have a difficulty in their relationship. I think those are all maybe, things that we need to pay attention to as well. So I'm a big proponent of prevention and early intervention. Why wait to see how bad it's going to get and then just
Yeah.
arrest the person or, respond to the problem? Better to intervene, prevent problems from happening, and then we don't have to wait and see what happened.
So, I mean, you're telling me that there aren't any immediate signs that you could pick up on, but surely there are things. I mean, we have this red flag legislation that they're trying to pass in the U.S. at the moment that tries to identify these people who are compromised or psychopathic or have social problems, psychological problems. Um, are there places in the world where we can tell somebody? They said say something, you see something, say something is part of what our role in society is. I mean, if we happen to spot someone who's behaving a bit strangely, what kind of behavior should you worry about, and what kind of behavior should you just dismiss as someone being eccentric or bizarre?
So that's the thing with see something, say something. We can see things such as articulating a plan, somebody saying that they want to hurt somebody else, somebody fantasizing about hurting somebody else, somebody
Mm.
that is clearly experiencing, some type of extreme acute trauma in their life. These are all things that we can say something about, but does it mean that they are going to become a serial killer? Or does it mean that they're experiencing stress and strain in their life that probably deserves intervention either way? I would err on the side of report it, tell authorities, we can get that person services that they need. Even if they're not going to become a serial killer, that person still needs help.
So what role does morality play in all of this? We know that certain people, even if they are perhaps prone to these kinds of behaviors, can be rectified by society if they're raised in certain conditions with good norms and values. What do you feel morality, if it has any role at all, what role do you think morality has to play in this?
There's actually a lot of interesting research on morality. And the problem is that it's really nature and nurture. So there's no one thing that's going to override. You can have a very bad childhood and have great parents and still end up in a very successful life.
Whew, you're not making me feel any better here, Doc. This is scary.
Yeah, unfortunately, the topic area, I think, lends itself to that. But the good news is that there's always hope, and we can prevent a lot of these horrific crimes, as I've always advocated for. There's no one cause of serial killing. We certainly see, red flags, but the reason why I'm not saying there's one cause of serial killing is because they're all opportunities for intervention, and we start seeing them more as that. We'll be better suited to actually prevent things, whether or not it's serial killing or some other negative outcome.
Well, I'm thrilled we got to speak to you. I know that you're a very busy person and you've got a lot to do. You're lecturing, you're helping solve all kinds of complicated cases, and you've had an incredible and illustrious career up to now. So it's great to be able to speak to you. And I've got to remind people that episodes 1 to 5 of the show air on Sunday the 3rd until Sunday the 31st of July. So that's next month at 8 o'clock in the evening. So that's Sunday the 3rd to Sunday the 31st of July, 8 o'clock. It's called Descent of a Serial Killer on CBS Justice, which is DSTV channel 170. And one of the stars of that show, Dr. Brianna Fox, who we've just been speaking to. Doctor, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, Gareth.
Great pleasure to speak to you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Well, that is Dr. Brianna Fox, Descent of a Serial Killer. It sounds like something we should all be watching. I'm really perturbed by the fact that she said there's no real way you can spot these people until sometimes it's too late. But we got to keep hoping that they'll find those red flags. And if you see anybody who's behaving strangely, I suppose you got to try and find someone who knows these things. Unfortunately for us, there are too few Brianna Foxes in the world and too many serial killers.
This week on the Auto Trader podcast.
Car manufacturers are trying to segment their vehicles into different parts of the market. Sometimes you can do that through a subsidiary. Sometimes you can do it through ownership of another manufacturer. There's different scenarios in which you can do this. And the main thing about this is, the main purpose is that you don't have to go and design two different products. Specifically, if you do own another car manufacturer.
Well, I mean, didn't Nissan and Datsun do that? Because they became one company, they became Nissan, right?
Yeah.
But for a while they were manufacturing the Datsun
as two different vehicles. Yeah.
Two different, with the same platforms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially,
and then Ford and Mazda did that too.
Yes.
Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
Just because it's about technology, connecting your business to the rest of the world doesn't mean you need to send rockets to space and use complicated solutions. Want to simplicate things? Well, join Jaco Voigt, who is the CEO of Catalytic, on the Unbundled podcast. With skin in the game and a keen focus on educating and assisting you and your business, Jaco decodes all the aspects of connectivity, security, and cloud solutions. Unbundled is brought to you by Catalytic and is available on cliffcentral.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. All right. It is Tuesday morning, cliffcentral.com, and we are live. You've got me and Mash to keep you company this morning. Lebang is either moving house or having a baby or both as we speak. And we got lots of other cool stuff heading your way. That was quite interesting to speak to Dr. Brianna Fox from Descent of a Serial Killer, which is coming to you for the whole of this month. Just in case you needed more crime and craziness in your life. I mean, a lot of people, they love this stuff, man. They just love the serial killer stuff, the crazy people stuff, the true crime stories. It's the most popular genre in podcasting, and it is the most popular stuff on TV by a long way. So everybody, even though we've got plenty of crime in the real world of South Africa, clearly a lot of people don't get enough of that. They want to see it on the screen as well. So I'm not going to say anything. It's not my favorite thing. It's not something I watch a lot of, but I know lots of people who do. And I'm not saying you're crazy. I'm not saying you're asking for trouble, but there's some of that stuff that's too freaky for me that I don't actually want to see. I would prefer to remain in ignorant bliss.
Oh, we love to see it. I'm one of the people you're describing.
I knew you were. Let me quickly tell you about the myth of innovation is that brilliant ideas leap fully formed from the minds of geniuses. We know this is not true. On this week's episode of Leadership Books Unpacked, Manda Tsifularo and Ngobile Ngobo have unpacked Change by Design, how design thinking transforms organizations and inspires innovation. It's a book by Tim Brown, and it's also an audiobook for creative leaders seeking to infuse design thinking into every level of an organization, whether it's a product or a service or driving new alternatives for business and society. So make sure you listen to Leadership Books Unpacked wherever you get your podcasts. It's proudly sponsored by Hollard Life Insurance and by Superlead. So big round of applause to Hollard Life Solutions and to Superlead for making it possible. Otherwise, you'd have to actually read the whole book from cover to cover yourself. This gives you the most important salient information, and you get to hear it all in one beautiful episode. That's Leadership Books Unpacked, and that's brought to you by Hollard Life Solutions and Superlead. Don't miss it. Go and check it out on our podcast list or on any of the podcast servers, wherever you get them. All right, so we are live this morning. We've got quite a lot of stuff to get to. We're also going to be joined in a short while by somebody who I think you're going to find very, very interesting. The co-CEO of Clockwork is a guy called Nick Simmons. We're going to talk to him about creating work and creating jobs and helping to grow the economy, which is something we should be very, very interested in this country because God knows we need it. So all of that's coming up in probably the next half an hour. Don't go too far away from that. So why do you think, Mash, that you and so many other people are so interested in this true crime stuff? I mean, is it just a fascination with like the most extreme kinds of people? Is it because you are secretly scared that the next door neighbor might be a serial killer? I'm trying to figure it out because I don't have the same level of fascination and interest that you do.
I think, first of all, it is really about just finding the most far-fetched version of reality. For example, for me, personally, it's so far-fetched. Some of the stories I hear, some of the stories I like seeing are just so ridiculous. So for me, it's so disconnected from my reality that it's something I'm so eager to actually delve into whenever I get the chance. And it's also a bit of looking for the warning signs because you never know who a serial killer could be. And it's not just limited to killers, of course. I mean, I listen to all kinds of crime podcasts, about scammers, about swindlers, about fraudsters. I mean, there's all kinds of crime. There's white collar, pink collar. There's so many different types of crime. So it's mostly about just being able to identify the red flags and just also disconnecting from your own life a bit, because some of these stories make you realize that, wow, I'm actually living kind of soft. I'm actually living a very like soft core lifestyle.
Well, you know, a lot of people are saying that you are going to end up being on one of those true crime podcasts if you move in with that person you've given with. You got to look out, because that's a distinct possibility. Just for those of you who just joined us and didn't hear the first part of the show, Mash went on 2 dates with somebody, and he's actually considering moving in with them, which is madness. I mean, that's like one of the most crazy things I've ever heard. Even though it may just be because this person is very rich and has a nice house that Mash was complaining, is much cleaner than the house he currently shares with his roommate. I still think you go there, you're going to end up in a body bag, dude. Don't do it.
Oh, Gareth, I'd rather be in a body bag in a mansion.
Oh, come on. You don't want to be in a body bag full. Jesus, that's terrifying. There are a couple of comments here about the other interview, which you may or may not have heard. Snae says, I watched your interview with Erica and Kelimpilo last night. It gave me nightmares. I felt so guilty listening to those ladies because I have a 4.5 liter Aquila sparkling water in my cupboard. So let me just explain what that's all about. So I interviewed these two women. They actually feature in a News 24 podcast, which won a couple of awards. They were both members of essentially a cult, KwaZulu-Natal in KwaZulu-Natal. And this cult has been operating for years now, since the 80s. It's a very, very strange story. It's an amazing story. I mean, if you like the idea of serial killers, you'll be just as interested in the story of a cult. And worth hearing the stories of these two women and what they went through and how they eventually got out and how these cults work. I mean, it's just absolutely mind-blowing what smart, intelligent, well-adjusted people can end up being convinced of by, religious leaders, people who promise you the world, people who are punishing you for things that you didn't even do. I mean, the kind of really quite savage things that these two women were exposed to during their time at KwaZulu-Natal is worth listening to. And both of them managed to get out alive. But they're both, there's a fair amount of damage there. And it's really, really interesting to hear their point of view. If you are fascinated by cults, if you are one of those people who just wants to know more about how it all works, how people can be talked into it, convinced of what's right and wrong, these two ladies were obviously taken in at a very young age and put there by their families. And you wonder to yourself, like, what kind of parent would willingly put their children into a place like this and just leave them there, which is kind of what happened to Kelimpilo anyway. To Erica, her whole family went there as well. Her dad died when she was quite young. The rest of the family moved in there. And they all became members of this cult. I think some of them still are in her case. And you have to ask yourself, like, how do you get to the point where this is what you're prepared to do to your family? It's really amazing. You can hear the whole interview. Just go to cliffcentral.com and you can listen to all of it or watch it on YouTube if you prefer. We try to do both. And you can tell us what you think about it too. I want to hear all about it. You can drop us a comment in the comment section now, or you can send us an email if you're not listening live. Parallel Parking says, I told my friends I was going to marry a person I had just met for 20 minutes right after meeting her. We were very happily married for 7 years, so it does happen. Oh,
see?
Okay.
See?
Oh, all right.
There are happy endings to this. It doesn't always end in murder.
All right. But I think the chances are very slim. I'm sorry, Mash, I don't want to spoil your dreams and your hopes and your ambitions of living in a mansion or having an incredible life with someone who you've only been on 2 dates with and who's already asked you to move in. But it does sound a bit fishy to me. And I don't think you want to put all your eggs in one basket. Plus, if it doesn't go well, like I said earlier, what's going to happen? You're going to be kicked out. You're going to be homeless, basically. And then you have to go and beg your now very angry roommate if you can move back in again.
I just
Mm-mm.
have to make her a pancake. She'll be fine.
Oh, really? Is that all it takes?
That's all it takes. I just tell her, listen, I'll cook. She'll be cool. I can come back.
Man. No, I'm very nervous for you. Well, at least go on 2 more dates and at least spend one night there before you decide to move in. Then you can do a
Yeah.
weekend. Take it in baby steps because this person might not be crazy, but they might not be everything that you think they are. You know, the problem with people is also the first date's easy because, you know, you put your best foot forward and you think carefully about what you want to say and what you want to reveal. And then that person is also, it's the game of getting to know each other. It's all very exciting and sexy and, you know, like the emotions are running high and you've got that excitement and that nervousness and the adrenaline. Second date is more of a like let's get to know each other. Maybe in the second date you even meet some of the people in that person's life later on. You talk a little bit more about each other. You ask all the questions that you had left over from the first date. By the third one, you start to see one or two of the things that may not be the best foot forward stuff. Then it's more honest, more real. I reckon you got to go on a few dates before you figure someone out. I don't know if I'm the only one or if that's very old school, but I reckon a few dates before you start getting too comfortable with somebody.
No, absolutely. I'll go on at least 2 or 3 more before I actually come to a decision. And maybe might even change our minds in the process.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good idea. Just take it slow. There's no need to rush this. MM says, I still don't understand how the parents didn't know. Chilling story. Now, I don't know whether MM's referring to the situation with the Shebeen, the tavern over the weekend, or whether you're referring to the cult interview, because both, it's extraordinary like how derelict these parents are. They just don't have any sense of duty towards their children in both cases. It's scary. You know, one of the reasons I haven't had children is because I would be terrified to not do the best job possible, because you get one shot with raising a kid. And if you raise a horrible kid, you're making that everyone in society's problem. You're making it everybody else's issue to deal with. And in the case of these kids who died in the Shebeen, it's just terrible. It's really, really desperately disappointing and very, very sad. And I can't help thinking that, you know, there's a whole generation of kids who are now damaged. The ones who survived, let alone the ones who are dead, obviously they're gone. But I just wonder how those other kids who knew them are going to feel. This is a story that they're now part of. It's very, very scary. Don't like it at all. As for the cults, that cult continues to operate in KZN, by the way. They're still there and they are still running. And the guy who started it is still alive, even though he's on death's door by the sound of things. He's not doing well. But listen to the interview and tell me what you think. It doesn't always end in murder isn't a good argument, says Chris. Yeah, that's a good idea.
But also, Gareth, in terms of...
MM was referring to the cult interview. I listened to the interview twice. Yeah, well.
Sure.
I mean, but also, the kids were, I think, Kalimpilo was about 8 or 9 years old, and the same for Erica when their parents took them to this mission. They thought it was a good place for the kids to learn morals and learn good lessons and be around good people and be raised in a good Christian way. So the parents were sold a bill of goods. And I mean, sure, you have to take care to figure out exactly what's going on there. You can't just drop your kids off and see them in a year's time or whatever. But I don't think the parents necessarily had nefarious intent. I think that they thought that this would be the best thing for their kids. Who knows?
Yeah, you never. And even if they knew what is happening there, in some cases, people are just so brainwashed to a point where they know what's happening, and to them, that's the right thing.
Yep.
Sure.
Absolutely. It's terrifying. Marianne says, when you marry for money, you will work for every rand for the rest of your married life. I think that's a good point. I think there are a lot of people who marry for money and then they don't realize that every step of the way, they're going to be paying for that. They're going to either have to put out the whole time, which I mean, it sounds funny and ridiculous, but I'm sure that there are so many men and women who married for money, mostly women, who every time they have to have sex with that guy, they're like, ugh, this is not worth it. And maybe they have to spend a huge fortune the next day to feel better about themselves. But having to sleep with someone that you don't want to sleep with must be one of the most terrible things that can happen to a person. I can't imagine anything worse. And I don't think I'm much of a prize, but let me tell you, if I can't choose the people I'm going to be sleeping with, that's going to make me instantly depressed and unhappy. So that's a good point. Also, you know why divorce is so expensive, Mash?
Why is it expensive?
Because it's worth it. So when people get divorced and they have to pay their ex-husband or ex-wife to get as far away from them as possible, the reason that they do is because it's worth it. Once you've come out of a relationship that didn't work and you don't want to see that person again, the usual situation is that those people stay away from each other as much as possible. And part of it is the settlement of the money so that you don't have to have dealings with that person again. So that's a good point too. Mash, this person isn't a priest by any chance, this person who you have you're thinking about going on another date with. No?
No, they're not a priest. They're not a priest at all. I can't disclose what they do, but they're not a priest.
All right, very good. Someone says financial prostitute, because that's what a lot of people are saying. I mean, listen, what's the difference between that and a blesser and a blessee, you know?
Absolutely.
I'm not saying.
Well,
I'm not saying.
Well, there is quite a difference, because with blessers and blessees and all of that, you're just exchangeable. You're in this week, you're out next week, you know, as opposed to an actual relationship where two people actually do like each other.
I hope it is that. I mean, we're not talking about your situation necessarily, but there are a lot of people who think they're in a relationship when they're really in a transaction. Steve E says, ask Charlene, that's Princess Charlene of Monaco, how it feels. Oh, yeah. See, now she is married to a prince. She's got all of this money. She lives in a palace. People call her Your Royal Highness. It's amazing. Your Serene Highness or whatever it is. She has this supposedly great life, and you've never seen anyone so unhappy, right? She couldn't be more miserable. She doesn't want to be around the man at all. She seems to be trying to get away from the media the whole time. It doesn't look like she's got a very happy life. I mean, she came in and stayed in South Africa for like a year where she didn't see her husband and kids because she didn't want to be around him for whatever reason. Or if we're just speculating, maybe she just wants to be on her own. Maybe it's not that she has a problem with him or she doesn't necessarily want to spend the time with her kids. Maybe that's not true. Maybe she just wants to be on her own. In either case, she's married to this guy and she's probably not very happy.
I mean, in some cases, space does actually make a relationship stronger. Being around each other all the time can be so exhausting.
Well, that's that. Okay, I want to just ask a question or two about this, because I hear this a lot from people about the distance and the space making a relationship stronger. I've never been in a long distance. I've been in long term. I haven't been in a long distance relationship. I don't know how that works. If you're not physically around the person, is it really even a relationship?
I don't consider it a relationship. If someone's far away, it's automatically not a relationship anymore. You guys are just playing open house, because it's just a thing of it's not about the physical contact. It's about just seeing someone. It's about just seeing someone. If we're not seeing each other for extended periods of time, I mean, we could actually find that interaction elsewhere. It'll be much easier to get it elsewhere. One person just looks at you the right way or just talks to you in a certain way, and you're already like, maybe I might just leave this person.
All right, but you said just now that that a bit of space can make a relationship stronger. So are you going against your own position there, or are you talking about space not as in actual distance, but like having your own interests, doing your own thing?
Yes, I mean space as in like having your own thing, having like during the day we're not seeing each other all day long. You know, for example, imagine working with someone, being with someone that you work with, you live with, everything. The whole day you're just together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that can be absolutely overwhelming.
let me put it this way then. I know a couple, they work together, they live together, and they have 2 kids. They are basically in each other's lives 24/7. I can't say whether it's working really well or whether it's going badly, but that sounds to me like it's a little bit too much, too close, too much of the time. I think you have to have a bit of space.
You need space. It's vital. I mean, okay, once kids are involved, it's a bit different because kids can be a bit of a distraction, because you're not all eyes on each other. You're not all in each other's faces all the time. The kids do give you a bit of a break from each other. You have to take them to school. You can go to the grocery shops with the kids. You have to keep the kids busy. You can take them roller skating or something. So it does give you a bit of a distraction. But if it's just the 2 of us and we're in each other's faces all the time, my thing is also I get bored quickly. So it won't last.
Yeah, I get bored quickly, but I think it's really important that people have to also have their own interests, right? So if you're in a relationship and you're constantly doing stuff together and you don't have your own things and she or he doesn't have their own things, I don't know that that's sustainable in the long term, because you know how people, you need your alone time. Sometimes you also need your alone things, like whether it's your hobbies, whether it's a book you like to read, whether it's spending a bit of time on your own. If everything is always totally around that other person, I know people who are like that, and they seem to me to be very happy. I'm willing to accept that I might be missing something here, but I think a bit of space is a really good idea. And being able to do your own things is a massively important thing too. These couples where they do absolutely everything together, they even have the joint Facebook account and the joint Instagram account. That just screams to me that there are big problems going on. Someone has obviously cheated if you have a joint account, because there's no other reason to have that.
There's no reason at all. It's like these couples who actually do everything together on social media as well. So apart from the joint accounts, they even start a joint YouTube. And it's a thing of once the relationship ends, what happens to all of these? Because also these accounts gain tons of followers. These accounts end up with hundreds of thousands of followers. They're making money from these accounts. This turns into a business at some point. And now when they break up, they must now, close everything down and go start over somewhere.
Also, these joint accounts are weird, because if you are messaging the wife because she's your friend and then the husband's reading it, you're like, you can't really joke about certain things because he might not know what you're talking about. If your friend is the husband, then you know that the wife is like snooping on it. It's kind of weird. It's not like you're hiding secrets or anything here. It's more like you can only have a relationship of a particular kind with one person. You don't have a relationship with a couple. Which is strange. So if the one is your friend and the other one is just their partner, it doesn't make it easy. You don't know if you're talking on this Facebook account to the one or the other. You're not even sure who's replying.
And I also think that it's okay to actually have those jokes and to also talk about your partner amongst your friends. I mean, for example, I do have a friend who actually, her boyfriend loves painting. He's always painting. He paints everything. He painted their whole house. He painted the driveway. He painted it like with lines and stripes and all that kind of stuff. I mean, whenever I get to a house, I'm just like, geez, your house looks like a testing course, a K53 testing course, because this guy's just painting everywhere. And we love joking about such things. But now, if they're sharing a social media account, I can't joke to her about that. We gave her boyfriend a nickname. We call him K53 now. We give him a little nickname. It's fun, it's jokes, but obviously she still loves him. She entertains these jokes, but she still loves him. So if they're sharing an account, we can't even make these jokes anymore.
Jesse says, my girlfriend and I nearly saw each other every day for the last 7 years. I don't know if there'll be an 8th. Woohoo! See, there's some honesty. Thank you, Jesse, for being honest, because a lot of people wouldn't say that. I hope she isn't, but I thank him for his honesty, because that's how it goes. If it's too much, if you're in each other's face the whole time, not a good idea. Joint Facebook accounts. It's usually the wife's way of keeping tabs on her partner, just in case someone from the past slips into the DMs. Maybe that's what it is. Again, I've never had a joint Facebook or Instagram account with anybody, so I wouldn't know what that's like. I wouldn't have any idea. Also, oversharing is just usually as unhealthy as not sharing anything at all. If you're sharing absolutely everything, like these couples who have, one of them will be on the toilet while the other one's brushing their teeth in the morning. Like, I think I never want to be that comfortable with anybody ever. To me, that is the opposite of sexy. And if you're like taking a shit while someone else is brushing their teeth, I don't ever see that as a good thing. To me, that's just terrible. Jared says, I've been married for 7 years and I've been with my wife for 16 years. We have separate bank accounts and we split the bill for rent and utilities. Well, hey, if you've been together 16 years, that's phenomenal. Then maybe you've got a point. I'm not going to criticize that. And anyone who wants to, they better have more than 16 years with their person.
Wow. That is crazy. I see here.
Yes.
I see here Tasheho says joint account in Hore. I know a couple who gets paid into the same account. I can't even swipe for my adult toys or strip club entrance fee.
Oh man. Yeah. This is very tough. Gary says joint Facebook accounts, proof the guy's balls have been transferred into his wife's handbag. Oh man. There's no guidebook to the perfect relationship, and it depends so much on the people. One of my friends is very happily married, and the two of them have completely different interests. They do completely different things with their time. They love each other when they're with each other, but they give each other quite a lot of space. And then, as I said, there's this other couple I know who work together. They are busy raising 2 kids, and they spend all of their time together. The office is their house. Their house is their office. There's no place that they can go where they have their own space from each other. And somehow it seems that works for them too. So different strokes, hey?
Different strokes. Yeah. Different strokes.
A lot of people talking about this joint social media thing. XS says, joint social media? What? That's crazy. Neither extremes are healthy. A good relationship is about balance. The closer you are to the middle, the better. I think we'll leave it at that because we are ready to talk to Nick Simmons, who's the co-CEO of Clockwork. Now, Clockwork is a full-service independent agency with branches in Johannesburg, Cape Town, and in the UK. Now, they have a youth mentorship program, which is called Growth Lab, and that's what we want to talk to Nick about this morning. Growth Lab celebrates its first successful year this youth month as the agency's primary internal junior leadership forum. Growth Lab has 20 junior staff who are under the personal guidance of their EXCO committee, and it was specifically created and designed to actively put younger people on a path to self-improvement while enjoying purpose-driven careers. We talk often in this country about how nobody's really helping young people to get ahead. They're not creating opportunities. We have massive unemployment in this country. And I thought it might be fun to find out from Nick how they do it, because it may be something that you want to do in your business. It may be something that you want to ask your boss to do if you work at a certain company. It may be something that we could all learn from. So I'm going to welcome him to the show now. Nick, how are you?
Morning, Gareth. Good. How are you?
Good. I was just explaining to Mash and to everybody who's listening what you guys do at Clockwork. Explain to everybody in your own words what Growth Lab is. And tell us, and by the way, congratulations on your first successful year. Tell us what Growth Lab is and what you've done in the last year.
Sure. Thanks, Gareth. Yeah. So Growth Lab came about sort of in early 2020. My founding partner of the business and I were sitting, we're kind of reflecting on what the strategic goals and projects for 2021 were going to be. And in the conversation, we sort of realized that we had developed like various really exciting leadership and management platforms for senior and mid-level staff to learn and grow from. But there was a gap that we weren't providing something similar for our junior staff, which is obviously counterintuitive because they, ostensibly have the most to learn and have the most potential for growth in the business. So we sort of brainstormed the idea and came up with the concept of Growth Lab, which is sort of in many ways an autonomous, self-managed and self-run group of our junior staff. So it's normally people in the first sort of 3 to 5 years of their careers. And I work with them pretty closely, and we sort of seek out topics and concepts and ideas to unpack together. And I just try and support it and encourage it and give it some sort of guidance where possible. But kind of the main thing about it is giving them an opportunity to lead something. Because I think often the growth comes from just doing and being given a platform to sort of, take charge and speak. So that's kind of loosely how I would describe it, I guess. Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Well, I mean, you mentioned a couple of things here, and I'm going to let Mash ask some questions because he sounds like a prime candidate for this kind of mentorship. And I get emails from people all the time about, like, can you mentor me? I don't know what the hell that means. I'm not going to pretend I understand it, Nick. But when you talk about junior staff, this is what gets me excited. Everybody's got management training courses, and they will send away their top level people to do skills improvement or to learn some new thing or to go to some big conference or whatever. The junior staff just get kind of forced to keep on keeping the wheels turning. And in many companies, that's pretty much the way it goes until they eventually leave, or they decide that that it's time for them to make a move either within or without of the company. How come there's such an emphasis on the top people and not on the bottom people, when some of those people at the lower levels of an organization might end up being exactly the leaders that we need in the future? We just don't explore their potential.
Yeah, interesting question. I think part of the answer is that it's sort of self-determining. So the people making the decisions about who gets to do all those cool things are generally the senior people, and they tend to make those decisions in a way that benefits themselves, I guess. That's the cynical answer. But also I think it's just it's like one of those, it's always been done like this things. So people people sort of reflect what they saw early on in their careers. And we come from environments where that's always just sort of been the case. Juniors fit in and kind of have to try and learn by osmosis. And then, when you get more senior in your career, companies tend to maybe think we can invest more seriously in opportunities for you to learn and grow in senior management. Maybe it's an idea that those people are more valuable because they have more experience. So, let's capitalize on that value by amplifying it with further training and stuff. And what gets left behind is all the juniors who have normally the most appetite for growth, who are left largely to figure things out for themselves, which also I don't think is necessarily the worst thing. There's good things that come with that. So it's about finding a balance between, not necessarily spoon feeding and hand holding, but also providing opportunities to do cool stuff and be part of more interesting conversations around how we grow and sort of learn as leaders and managers and stuff.
Well, we've got a big problem in South Africa because we've got huge unemployment and we've got masses of people who have probably got incredible skills, who've got an enormous appetite to succeed, and who just need to be given the chance. So how do you think we can deal with A, the unemployment problem, and B, the leadership vacuum in South Africa? Because these are the big questions that even the politicians are frightened to answer. I'm going to make it difficult for you by saying you've been doing this a year, seems to be working. What lessons do you think could be writ large for the whole country?
First of all, I would hate to be trying to answer those questions. They're huge existential dilemmas that we face as a country and a planet today. But I guess what I can offer from what I have seen is that giving young people an opportunity to learn and grow, and importantly to embrace a growth mindset, yields really, really, clear and measurable, feelable differences. More so, I'd say, not to throw shade at sort of senior people who I've worked at, but just giving small amounts of time and investment seems to get returned, many times over by juniors who I see run with it and grow and flourish. So I guess maybe for me, what the answer to that question would be, and it's cheesy, but a little does go quite a long way with juniors who are, have the appetite for pouncing on things and growing. I mean, not everyone junior in the staff is in Growth Lab. It's fully like an optional opt-in thing, and that's very much part of the spirit. So the first thing is people have to want it. So you got to work with people who want to do this sort of thing and want to invest in the growth and do the extra work and learn and grow.
Mhm.
And then, from there, it's just about creating frameworks and, programs and conversations. And I think often it's also just about letting people that are, younger people in companies and possibly society at large know that their voices count, their views count, and they matter. And that we're here to engage with them. Often, like senior people in companies, and countries and societies, I guess, sort of there seems to be a sense of not wanting to necessarily engage with the youth in an authentic, meaningful way. Often it's sort of window dressing or lip service, or it's part of a political strategy. So I think, actually engaging with young people in terms of what is important to them, what do they want, how do you guys want to do this, let's work together, and giving them the autonomy and the control, and giving them some of the power that you normally are used to controlling as a senior stakeholder in a business, and seeing what they do with it, with a bit of good guidance, some good direction, suggestions and ideas, creative sparks fly, and we see really cool stuff happening. And for me, the most rewarding thing has been watching the conversations come alive, watching people who you hadn't heard really ever speak, because young people don't really get the opportunities to speak in rooms, and they often sort of are shy and timid. So one of the rules is you kind of have to speak in Growth Lab. We've been doing the thing 100% virtually since we launched it sort of toward the beginning of COVID. So sadly, we've never got to really run a Growth Lab in an office, which we'll look at now because the mask mandate's been dropped and things are a bit different. But how do we get people to step up out of their shells and voice their opinions and bring themselves and their creativity to their positions at work? It's difficult at first, but once you start and you crack that open, you get people talking, it's amazing, because you bring so much, a complex layer of sort of youthful personality comes to the table. And I think every country and society should be excited and want to have that. So yeah, don't know if that really answered your question, but it's sort of what I've experienced.
No, that's good. That's good. Mash, you've got a couple of things you want to know about here.
Yes, Nick, I love the fact that you use the word engage, because as part of the youth myself, we don't usually hear that. We don't usually hear people saying that they actually want to engage with the youth, because normally it's a case of the youth are just being told what to do. They're just being told to push pencil and not actually get their voices heard. So I actually really love that. And I'd like to find out, are there any specific sectors or skill sets that the Growth Lab program focuses on?
So I'll give you an idea of how it works. So obviously we're in communications and advertising. So our sort of purpose as a business is to help, brands communicate with whoever that is. Normally it's in advertising and, platforms that you guys know well. I mean, media platforms just like this are kind of the things that we look at. So we focus sort of in our space, but it's, I wanted to take the lens of, this isn't really about clockwork, and it's not really about our industry. It's not really about work. It's about you guys. So how do we cultivate, an authentic desire for growth and learning? And how do we use clockwork and your role here and our Exco and leadership team as a supportive vehicle to help facilitate that? And then what sort of topics do you guys want to talk about? So, we've one of the first topics we unpacked together was basically how to nurture and develop a successful career. This is a question that young people in professional environments are grappling with. I remember that grappling with that question, thinking, how do I get somewhere? How do I become successful? And, what does that look like? And we brainstormed and unpacked a solution together, which turned out to be, well, we have all of these pretty successful people in the company, right? They're our Exco team. We have about 8 Exco who essentially lead the company. Why don't we just bring them in closer to the conversation with you guys and come and present to you all their stories? So our full Exco had to develop a 20-minute presentation, come and present it to all of Growth Lab, have a conversation. And then after that, they could all request to be mentored for 6 months by an Exco member. And then we divided everyone up, and then every Exco member had 3 Growth Lab sort of Growth Labbers to mentor for 6 months. And as a result, you had all these interesting conversations happening across the organization, which never would have happened. You had my partner, the co-CEO, engaging with like a design intern and a junior traffic manager sort of thing. People that you maybe look once or twice at and have a passing conversation with. Now, Exco members are unpacking deep conversations around life and philosophical things about what is my purpose and meaning. And also daily stuff, like, what should I say to my dad who's unhappy with this choice I've made? So, driving those sort of conversations is really, like I said earlier, there's so much to gain with small incremental things, because I think they're so hungry for this sort of thing. So just doing that, like we saw them flourish and grow through it. And there's lots of little stories, those conversations changed the short-term destiny of quite a few people who ended up switching roles, and they ended up sort of moving to different places and doing all sorts of interesting things with their life, because they had an older senior person in the organization who had some influence behind them in a conversation and helped move things around and move them forward. So that was really meaningful. Some of the most meaningful things have happened to me in the 10 years of building Clockwork through these conversations and seeing them. So, yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, have you encountered, because the cynical part of me wants to ask, is it always received well? Like, are all the people who work inside of your company, and are all the people who come to Growth Lab really doing it because they want to, or are there some who are just feeling like they're forced to do it? Because this happens in every organization. There are always people who over-deliver and are tremendous and are enthusiastic and get involved. There are always one or two who kind of are just doing it because they feel if they don't, they'll get into trouble.
Yeah, I mean, that's a question that kind of does haunt the back of my mind about this, because, I'm also relatively a cynic. Yeah, listen, I'm sure there are people who roll their eyes in the background, who see it as kind of another lip service, cheesy thing that we're trying to do.
Because let's be serious, Nick, there are a lot of companies in South Africa, especially the bigger corporate ones, who are forced to do like skills improvement and development and all of that stuff. But they're really just ticking the boxes because they don't want to get into trouble. And this is how they get points, so that they can claim they've got this kind of program going on, which gets them certain advantages in the business world. But they don't really care about this stuff, right? So it's okay to be cynical about it sometimes, because there is a lot of cynical stuff happening.
Absolutely. I'm pretty cynical when I see that stuff as well. And I've known friends, and I've also, been through things like that. So for me, though, I think it was like, listen, there's probably going to be an element of that, but, it's outside of what we can control. I can't control what the perception of this thing will be. What I can say is that I have been sort of chastised by people in the company for us not using it enough as a strategic tool. So, it's been going for a year, and this is the first time we've ever spoken to anyone externally about it. So I've been told we actually need to use it more in marketing. And I'm like, sure. Or, we need to plug this into our transformation and BE strategy more. And I'm like, yeah, sure. But for me, the core purpose of it is way more important. And I'd rather let the focus of the thing be about growing these like young professionals, and then off that, like, connect in maybe a little bit more intelligently with marketing and with HR and procurement and stuff around how we leverage this in more strategic ways. But I think for me,
can I throw this in quickly, because this is something I've thought of too. Sometimes you grow people, and Mash, you can say whether this is your experience too, because you're quite new and you haven't been in the working world for that long, so you're not nearly as cynical yet. But sometimes in a company, you grow people, you give them more and more responsibilities, you groom them to take over, because ultimately the best thing you can do in business is to make yourself replaceable, especially when you're near the top. And then they just go. They take all those skills, they take all that effort, they take all that work, and they move to some other place, and they use the expertise and the experience they've gained with you to help someone else grow their business.
Yeah, I mean, that's happened more times than I like to remember, painfully. I mean, we've seen amazing junior people come in, grow, learn, flourish, and then only to move on because they've learned what they can from you. It's just kind of, you have to take it on the chin and accept it, and feel good that you've maybe made, if you have helped someone grow and transform and become better, and they've gone somewhere else, on one hand, you're helping your competitors, but on the other hand, you're improving an industry, and maybe you're having a tiny impact on society by helping grow people. And so you have to have a little bit more of an altruistic kind of view on it, which is, well, we didn't quite get the long-term one on that, but maybe we made something better. I don't know, but I think you have to, dig deeper your inner grace and kind of, higher mindedness for those moments. But there's that famous quote, which is like, I think it's something along the line, I'm probably going to butcher it, but it's like, you have two options. You either invest or you don't invest in growing your junior staff. Now, the downside of investing is when they leave. On the other hand, what's the downside of investing of not investing in people? Well, it's if they stay. So, far worse to have people growing and learning and leaving than people staying and not growing and not leaving.
Yeah,
Then you're just stuck with a stagnant kind of, bunch of people.
Absolutely.
So Nash, what would you want if you could structure someone who is young and who wants to learn more, who wants to get the experience, who wants to grow themselves? What kinds of things would you like? And let's see how many of those things Nick can say they tick off the list at Clockwork when they put Growth Lab together.
Well, first of all, one of the very, very first things I think every young person coming into a company should actually be introduced to is actually the possibility of management roles. So actually learning what it takes to actually be in that position, the position of actually basically taking the wheel. Because as I said earlier, it's a thing of most young people are brought in to be pencil pushers, basically, just to work low level and just to basically do the work that nobody else wants to do. And because of that, when they leave, as you mentioned, Nick, when they leave, it's a case of if you did invest in them, then it's horrible. But if you didn't, then it's also horrible, actually, because then you're going to have someone that can't do much in your company. So what I actually want to know is how do you guys specifically benefit people in terms of what they learn from Growth Lab? How would you say you guys actually benefit young people?
So thanks, Mash. First of all, I made a note of that. So it's nice to get your insight in terms of, and that is a topic that we have looked at. What does management entail? That's actually one of the topics that's on our kind of content list to unpack in time. But it's a difficult one to answer, and it's one that I think we're answering in time and figuring out. And I'm probing and asking a lot to the young, to our Growth Labbers around what do they want, what value do we have to offer you guys. But I think the main thing is just companies also there's a big fixation and focus with teaching skills to young people, which is great in the workplace, but I find that sort of happens by doing the work every day and showing up. I think the main value that we try and provide here is how do you grow you as a person? So how do we get people to realize that they can show up with more of their own selves and their own authenticity and authentic creativity in their roles? How do they bring themselves to work? And that's often about helping support them with confidence and basically giving them the platform, which is to say, you guys count, you matter. We want you to learn and grow. We want you to tell us what you want to learn and grow about. And as an extra benefit, we get to learn a lot from them. And I think it's incumbent on any business today who works sort of, with any sort of youth-oriented market to be connected to young people and to learn and grow from them as well. So in a kind of way, I think we have as much to learn from Growth Lab as Growth Lab has to learn from the seniors in our company, which is something I keep telling our exco as well. So it's a bit of a paradigm shift, but yeah, I think it's helping find direction and just a platform to learn, grow, and have meaningful conversations around that for them.
One last thing from me. Sorry, go ahead, Mash.
All right. And I do want to say that I do love the fact that you did mention earlier that you do let your members actually choose the themes that they'll be tackling. So that's one thing I actually wanted to say. I actually really, really love that because nowadays it's also a thing of young people are used to getting dictated to all the time. They're not used to actually having a voice and actually speaking out on things that they want to be involved in. So kudos to that, actually.
Thanks, Mash. And then alongside that, we also elect a new president every quarter. Sorry, Gareth. So the president also, so we just elected a new one, and they have to kind of coordinate and run the thing for 3 months. And I'm just there to be like, I'm like a sounding board for ideas, and I'm there to make sure that they can push things through and get things done when they need to, and unlock budget for fun things like, lunches and stuff like that. We got to like tempt them with some of the frivolous stuff as well. But yeah, it's a whole platform, and I think the presidential sort of leadership of it is also one of the really cool things. And I get to work closely with whoever that is at the time too.
Oh, yeah.
On a much more kind of practical level, do you feel, and I kind of suspect I already know your answer on this one, otherwise you would never have started Growth Lab, but there's a lot of criticism for the younger generation, for millennials, for Gen Zs, for the TikTok generation, as we call them, that these people aren't particularly serious about responsibilities, that they feel very, and again, I'm not speaking for myself here, but this is what people say, you know, and especially in employment circles and in HR, there's a lot of chatter around entitlement all over the world, not just here in South Africa, but all over the world. Entitlement, they want to be the CEO immediately. They want to have all of the bells and whistles, but they don't want to do the hard work. And there isn't this seriousness and this commitment that maybe you get from people who grew up in a generation or two before. Do you think that's fair, or do you think that that's just propaganda?
Yeah, I don't really buy that perspective. You do hear it a lot. There's a lot of cynicism from sort of, you know, can we describe ourselves as the older generation? But I don't know. When people say that, I don't know if they've forgotten what it was like to be 21 or 22. Like, I don't know. I wasn't that serious, and neither was anyone I knew. And I didn't really have a very good understanding of the world and what I could do and what I was owed and not owed and all that stuff. So I think like that's part of being young. I think to interpret that through a negative lens is very cynical, and I don't think it's helpful or healthy. I don't think it's really an accurate perspective either. What I see young people that have a tremendous amount of open-mindedness and appetite to learn, to grow. What I really love about working with Growth Lab in the South African context in particular is a lot of like the latent inherited cynicism and, you know, that you see around sort of, you know, doom and gloom apocalypse kind of South African story of like everything being terrible and falling apart and, you know, it never going to get better. I don't pick that up with Growth Lab people at all, which is interesting. So I think it's like a generational thing with people in my generation, maybe the one or two generations below me, and then older generations, there's like a bitterness like that is like carried through everything. And, you know, all the political corruption and disharmony and all this stuff. Right. And I find that noise tiring and kind of like, you know, we get it. Things are tough. Growth Lab members don't seem to carry that. I haven't encountered that. There's far more of like, we grew up in like a difficult environment. Things aren't perfect. We're not like Norway or Sweden where everything works. We're South Africa, and we're here to like grow and learn and do the best with what is instead of complaining about what isn't. So, I mean, on the contrary to that view, which complains about the youth, I'm quite inspired. And it's one of the personal reasons I love being part of Growth Lab in my capacity, is it helps me stay connected to like a hopeful young sort of worldview. And that helps fight against sort of like the normal stuff that our generation constantly complains about. There's much less optimism in my age group. So I think that's cool, because optimism is a useful thing to, you know, leverage to drive innovation and creativity. So they're quite inspiring to me personally.
All right, we're going to have to wrap this up. Nick Simmons is the co-CEO of Clockwork, and we've been talking about Growth Lab, which is the internal way of helping facilitate, develop, grow, and groom the talent of the next generation. It's very, very cool to speak to you, Nick. I hope more companies are doing this stuff, not just the big, huge corporates who feel that they have to tick it off as part of their HR strategy, but the companies that are really making a difference in South Africa, and those successful smaller companies that are able to lead the way because they're nimble and because they actually know the names of all of their staff. They're not just people who are checking in with a number every day. It's really good to speak to you, and thank you for sharing your insights with us. This is useful stuff. I think a lot of people are going to be thinking about this if they haven't already.
Cool, Gareth. Thank you so much for having me. This was really fun. Mash, good to see you. Take it easy, guys. Thanks for having me.
Cool.
Cheers, Nick.
Thank you, Nick. There's Nick Simmons, and that is a wrap on this morning. I hope you've had an awesome day with Mash and I. If you want to send us an email, you can do so. contact@cliffcentral.com. We'd love to hear from you. Tomorrow, Simpiwe rejoins us. We've got lots of cool guests through the course of this week. You do not want to miss a show going all the way up to Friday. There's plenty of entertainment, information, inspiration, and hopefully a little bit of empowerment like this morning too. So stick around for more of that. Have an excellent day. We will see you tomorrow at 6 a.m. bright and early.